Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsul Alam Panto, and I shall be presiding in the position of host for this entirety of the week. But before we begin our discussions today, I want to introduce all my panelists who join me for this program. But in the studio, we have Mr. Charles Dalton, who is, of course, joining us as an international consultant on today's show. He is, of course, served almost in all seven continents, if I'm not wrong, and is quite so educated on the world important factors. And of course, on the other hand, we have Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes, who is our geopolitical correspondent from Washington, D.C., and he shall be joining us through Zoom. And of course, I must say that Scott A. Leckman, who shall be also joining us on Zoom from Utah, Salt Lake City. I want to begin our discussion today with Mr. Charles Dalton. We know that the United States of America had entered a shutdown, a federal government shutdown, in 1st of October, if I'm not wrong. And today is the 2nd of November, spanning what I know to be one of the longest federal shutdowns in America's history. I want to understand how you feel about this shutdown and where Democrats and Republicans are at.
Yeah, this is the second longest shutdown. I mean, the first one was during the first Trump administration. And this one proves the point of what is possible to be happening to young children not being provided with food aid under the SNAP program. Before, we had sort of a theoretical of the premiums are going to go up for Obamacare. People may have to pay more. It was the Democratic position was really not as concise as it will be tonight when the insurance companies have to announce what their premium increases are going to be. But more importantly, millions of young American children will be denied food subsidies, food benefits, starting today because of the Republican position. If SNAP benefits are stopped, then we will see that this is a battle between Democrats protecting young people, poor people, hungry people, and Republicans protecting rich millionaires, billionaires. So I think tonight we'll see a real change in the position. The pressure will go on the Republicans much, much greater because Americans typically do not like to see starving children.
Well, thank you once again, Mr. Dalton. But see how you had described how the Republicans are now going to be helping the rich, while the Democrats will be looking at those who are marginalized. And of course, we know there's an impasse regarding this Obamacare that was previously known. And of course, this has a lot of health benefits for regular day Americans. I just want to connect the dots between the recent events that have taken place in all 50 states. One of those that include the No Kings rallies that had happened.
Sure.
I know that it is an old news story that had happened, but I want to analyze how it has significance. Of course, of Donald Trump, when he was in South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, the leader of South Korea, had awarded him a crown. Now, that is the level of international stories that we picked out on. And of course, vast spread protest is what is expected of those who will have to now understand a new insurance premium, as you were saying. Do you think that in the coming days, especially right before the midterm elections, is there going to be some kind of uncertainty between most general Americans? How do you think about it?
Well, I think that that the key thing to look at, of course, is there is this definite divide, and it will persist. But the No Kings rally was a metaphor. It was a metaphor for what's wrong when somebody tries to seize absolute power. And the absolute power being seized was in so many domains. It was in health insurance. It was in the SNAP program. It was in the military invasions of cities. That the overreach by the President of the United States was so dramatic that people thought that it was necessary to take to the streets to oppose this emerging king or some person who thought he was the king. So it's a metaphor. It's not really like we're against kings. We're against people who do not respect the rule of law, who are willing and committed to engaging in expending their authority and taking on all kinds of controversial issues solely for the purpose of proving, yes, I can do this. I am the boss. Unnecessary.
Of course, we see that the United States of America has some kind of dominance over the worldwide issues. One of those that recently we picked out on Donald Trump as the president of the United States of America. He has tried his level best in the last 10 months to avoid any kind of confrontation between other countries, or if not, to understand the confrontation methods and to bring down or to come to a ceasefire. These words have become somewhat more demanding as of this year in compared to previous years. One of those that include between Israel and the Palestinians, or of course they call it as Hamas, a military outfit that operates inside Palestinian territory in the Gaza Strip. In recent cases, we've seen such issues such as United States have said that they should stop the annexation of the West Bank. And of course, these issues are quite important to understand where the United States underscores where they lie, where their decision making is important. How do you think? There's one more example that I will use right after you say it. One of them is including the South Americas, where U.S. and Venezuelan authorities are at neck to neck with one another. How do you think about it? The United States, where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
Well, once again, it goes back to somebody who is unwilling to recognize the limitations of power, and therefore stretches himself for the situation with the Venezuelans and the drug war. You know, I think that you have to look at some of the things that were done in a positive way, and then look at things which are not holding, like this Israel-Gaza thing, as we'll discuss more, I'm sure. That situation is still very, very unclear, very tenuous piece. And I think that, you know, Trump was on a roll in sort of finding ceasefire operations around the world in these small skirmishes between Cambodia and Thailand and from other places like that. He was able to broker some sort of a ceasefire. And good luck to him. And I think that people should be pleased that that was something positive that was coming out of this presidency. Domestic policy is a disaster. He's been unable to exert any positive influence on the United States in terms of what the common people need and want. And now his numbers are really below 40% approval rating. So people are becoming and being aware of the fact that Republicans are being blamed for the shutdown. Trump himself is losing some of his luster that he acquired by these ceasefire arrangements. But I think that, you know, I think he is overplaying his cards. He's simply this thing with Venezuela of like unilateral action, you know, against what he sees to be the war on drugs. Therefore, he can invoke the War Powers Act to attack these vessels that are in the Pacific and in the Atlantic from Venezuela. So I think he's kind of like overreacting. And we'll see if how long the American population is willing to put up with that. Sadly, we have a long way to go before the midterms. It's to November of 2026. So we have to sit and watch and see what's going to happen in terms of reduced credibility for the United States overseas, as well as reduced credibility for Trump at home. But mostly, I think we should focus in the next 2 or 3 days. How are we justifying as a country not providing food for 4 million young children? That's the key issue.
Well, thank you for your analysis on this issue. I understand that almost 4 million children and women are going to be facing tougher days with the health insurance premiums in America, and that is one of the major issues that I had picked out earlier today. But I want to get everyone's attention, including our viewers and of course Mr. Dalton, that our Zoom connections are awaiting to be connected. But before we do that, let me describe one of the major issues regarding the Trump administration. This time around, the Trump administration had threatened the country, the African country of Nigeria, with military action for alleged killing of Christians. Of course, this came in on Saturday. If the Nigerian government continues to continues this killing of Christians, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into what is now a disgraced country, guns blazing. These are the comments that Donald Trump wrote on his Truth Social handle And of course, he is also the owner of that platform. And this comes in a very new centric, I would say. First, it was how to cut off U.S. aid, which is the U.S.'s top preliminary institution that enables the aid to less developed nations. And we know that Nigeria is one of those places. Of course, they are making some advances in tech and finance. I want to get your observation, Mr. Dalton, as we wait for our Zoom connections, because I know that you have vast experience working inside Africa as well.
Yeah, I've worked in 13 African countries. You know, if you look at the dividing line in Africa, what really happens is you're looking at the Christian South and the Muslim North.
Yes.
And as the Muslim North becomes more populous and expands down to the south, the Christian populations, as happened in Sudan, and the creation of South Sudan was really based on that principle, is that you will see conflicts along the dividing line all the time. This is what Darfur was about in South Sudan originally, okay? And this is also about the province called Igbo in Nigeria, where this dividing line now falls. So these battles between Christians and Muslims along a divided line for land and for assets is fairly common. If it becomes clearly a religious war as opposed to a war for land or resources, then I think you are going to have a big problem with Nigeria. Now, Nigeria is no small case.
Yes.
It's the largest economy in Africa.
Yes.
Wealth is in the oil industry. They have a lot of power. And so they would need to be confronted aggressively if that's the case. But these battles that take place in the villages all throughout Central Africa are very difficult to police. I mean, how do we enforce? We can, of course, the Christian community will report that they're under attack, but how do you police that kind of a line in the middle of a Central African country like Nigeria? It's nearly impossible. So, I mean, Mr. Trump can be upset about this. I'm sure he supports the Christian, his base of the Christianity, but I think it's one of those empty threats, but we'll see.
Well, of course, I want to, since we were talking about the continent of Africa, there are some drastic news that I am willing to share with all of our viewers. Over the weekend, we have seen the Rapid Support Forces in South Sudan had entered El Fasher, and a hospital in which the Sudanese Minister of State and Social Welfare, Ms. Salma Ishaq, had revealed to the international media that almost 300 women were killed in the first 2 days after El Fasher in the capital of North Darfur in Western Sudan. So this has taken to storm in international media. Some of the satellite imagery that had been there online had shown that the bodies were being pulled between the fields, and the color of the fields have turned from green to red. I understand that this is a very first kind of situation where the RSF has shown how they're very heinous in conducting such war crimes.
Yeah.
These are nothing short of war crimes. What is your take? I know that you worked in South Africa, almost in 13 countries there.
Yeah. Yeah, what's this is RSF is a militia. It's funded by oil revenue. It has been fighting in Darfur, and that's where the issues are coming from now. Mostly are in Darfur on the western coast of South Sudan. And that province has always been a bone of contention because it has a huge amount of oil reserves. And the slaughter that went on there, which I saw the satellite images that you saw as well. I mean, the fields were covered in blood. There were satellite pictures of people being taken out of the hospital and shot. That goes back to the point I made earlier, in which tribalism, religious identity, other factors like that will affect the psyche of some of these militia groups that will become absolutely rogue and engage in killing. And so that's the situation we're now facing in South Sudan. It's a very, South Sudan broke off from North Sudan because the southern part of the country, most of the part in the east, which bordered Ethiopia, was largely a Christian enclave. And Khartoum in the north was basically Muslim. And so South Sudan demanded some independence. It was granted that by the United States that went there and provided heavy support to South Sudan, still provides it, but they cannot police Darfur. And this militia group is crazy, I guess is a good enough word to say. I mean, they really have not just want to take the land, they want to eliminate every other tribe that may exist in that area. They will kill them in cold blood. And again, we can have outrage about this, but this is not something which can easily be fixed because it's a breakdown in the culture. And those kind of situations take decades to resolve.
Well, quite so important issues that you've raised out about Khartoum and El Fasher and how South and Northern Sudan have been fighting for a while. And these ethnic clashes are quite so important to recognize the loss of life. Almost when the RSF had attacked El Fasher, almost 750 children had fled from that region itself. I understand that it is one of the most important news elements of recent times, especially over the weekend in Africa. But I want to get everyone's attention here. We understand that there is some kind of development towards from the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. We knew that there has been a declaration which says from Gwangju that it's going to be recognizing cultural and creative industries as a growth driver in the region. We know earlier on Xi Jinping and Donald Trump had met and they had discussed how soybeans would be transferred. But this time around, Xi Jinping had met a different adversary. It was Japan, who was led by its first female prime minister, if I'm not wrong. And we understand how Japan has some kind of ally relationship with the United States, while China is not considered an ally but also considered the greatest manufacturing hub in Asia. These are new dimensions, and this declaration came up with 21 APEC nations which said that they would be holding, reaffirming their recognition and robust trade between all of these economies towards the prosperity of Asia Pacific region. Now, my question to you, Mr. Dalton, we understand how the US and China had tariffs, reciprocal tariffs affecting both of their economies. There was a certain shutdown or a certain slowdown, if I would call it, between these tariff negotiations. Of course, Marco Rubio and Wang Yi, these two counterparts from two different nations, they understand that if this fight were to be prolonged, it would make sure many economies would become in a point of uncertainty. I want to understand, where do you see this relationship grow in the coming days?
Well, it's too late. Let's divide that into the APEC decision to recognize small industries as exporters and provide them with the benefits that they need to export from their cultural trade. This can be baskets, masks, what have you. But don't forget that APEC, if we look at the Asia Pacific, if you look at the Pacific Ocean, of course, along the South American border, we have Chile and Peru and all of those countries which are part of APEC, but you wouldn't think about it right off the bat. You'd say, oh, these are all Asian countries. They're not. It's that whole expanse of the Pacific to try to trade across two continents. And so I would support and thank President Xi for opening up markets to these cultural small businesses that need to make baskets or whatever they make and export them into China and make it available and provide for sufficient financing and credit to allow that to happen. So that's a very good positive thing to say. Now, Panta, what's the second part of that question about?
How it has, what is the future of this deal, and will this deal be faltering
US deal.
in the future?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, once again, Trump imposed a very heavy tariff on China because of the rare earths, on 100% tariff. And then when the time came when he met face to face, he backed away again. So there's an expression called TACO, okay, TACO, okay, which is about Trump always caving in, So Trump always gets out of the deal. He tries to I'm a tough guy, I'm a cowboy, I'm going to make these guys pay. And then when he gets into the situation exactly, he backs off. So I think that that's really going to be the continuing quid pro quo about individual commodities. He'll do this all the time. He'll impose these, put pressure on somebody he thinks is going to work. Now, of course, American farmers are very happy to be selling soybeans. It was like a huge market for them. And this stuff was sitting in silos just waiting if it would be otherwise unable to be sent out of the country at all. So, soybeans is a large part of both the diet and in terms of feed, grain and so forth for Chinese farmers and Chinese consumers. So one hopes that that goes forward all the time because the American farmers definitely need those markets.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dalton, for your stout observation regarding Donald Trump and how he is using a push and pull strategy. We will definitely come back to more of these issues right after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be taking a short commercial break, but after the break, we'll be discussing much more impending issues.
সারা দেশে লাখো মানুষের কঠোর কর্মতৎপরতা ও নিষ্ঠায় এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন 16 কোটি মানুষের হাতের নাগালে। দীর্ঘ 30 বছর ধরে বিশ্বস্ততা ও দ্রুততার সাথে সেবা দেওয়ায় গ্রাহক সেবায় এখন শীর্ষে। বাংলাদেশে গ্রাহক সেবার সাফল্যের পর এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন বিশ্ব বাণিজ্য কেন্দ্র সিঙ্গাপুরে। আপনার যে কোনো পণ্য সিঙ্গাপুর থেকে বাংলাদেশে বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন। এসএ পরিবহন প্রাইভেট লিমিটেড, লজিস্টিক্স পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, 22 রবার্টস লেন, সিঙ্গাপুর 218302। ফোন 0065 629 24900। বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো 80টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to today's International Affairs. Let me say that our Zoom connections are awaiting to be connected on this program, but we of course have Mr. Charles Dalton in the studio who has been generously giving his insights regarding these world important issues, one of which I will bring out right now. There is a breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, almost 9 left with life-threatening injuries in a UK train stabbing. 10 people have been taken into the hospital after stabbing on a train in Cambridgeshire. 9 are believed to have life-threatening injuries as per the British Transport Police. While no fatalities have been declared yet, this has been of course noted as a major incident by counterterrorism officers. I want to come to Mr. Dalton. I know that the news media is saying that almost 2 suspects have been arrested in this case, and let me understand that it is the world's only monarchy, if not the most popular monarchy, the UK, the United Kingdom. In a place like United Kingdom, such an event to take place, how do you feel about it?
Well, there's lots of monarchies in the world, including Jordan, for example. But I mean, that aside, if you notice the news lately coming from the UK, there seems to be a lot more violent action, including the use of knives and swords, even, to try to show the frustration that the people are experiencing with inflation, with high prices, with sort of the lack of leadership. You have to admire and respect the Metropolitan Police. They usually do a very, very good job. When I'm there, I feel perfectly safe. There's not an open carry law. People don't have guns. So when somebody who may be mentally challenged is looking to exact any kind of revenge against his condition in life, they take out a knife and they attack the population. I'm glad that they have these two suspects arrested or certainly detained. But more and more the frustration is building around the world, but particularly in the UK, I've noticed that there seems to be more and more violence being used when in the past that was such a rare occurrence, probably the safest place in the world.
Yes.
The king is an inspirational figure. I mean, he has no direct role in anything. He's a royal leader, and I think he deserves a lot of respect. And I think his mother was the sweetest person in the world. So I just find it strange that in the UK, so often these days we're seeing acts of violence, multiple attacks that are taking place. I hope that somehow or other they can put some patches back on the society and make it function as it used to. People will talk about immigration, and I don't know who the two people detained are, but they will talk about immigration, that immigration has changed the character of the country. No question, I think this is also being fought all over Scandinavia, for example. Sweden is also now pushing back against open immigration. So, I mean, let's see what happens with who the two alleged suspects are. But I feel sorry for the British people who have always had sort of a tranquil, easy life because no guns were allowed, and violence was the exception, not the rule.
Well, since we were talking about the United Kingdom, I want to focus in general about Europe today. And this part of the segment, we know that the Russians have been testing their nuclear-capable torpedo systems and have said that if other countries are set to deploy or to test nuclear capacities, Russia has every means and the rights to do so. And every now and then along the border with Russia and all of its other countries, we have Finland, we have Hungary, we have Poland, we have Belarus as well as Ukraine. These countries are often seeing their sovereignty questioned, whether it's by an incursion of a drone or by a reconnaissance flight by the Russian Air Force. So back again to what my question would be. This is now a situation that we have not seen in the last 25 years. A nation like Russia is suddenly acting up towards this western flank, and we see eastern Ukraine, a part where the Russian military has proven the fact that they are conducting some kind of war time effort. Of course, these incursions into other sovereign nations, it has the NATO questioning that how we are going to deter this Russian war machine. And in recent times, Donald Trump has moved into other issues and is not trying to focus directly on this Russian aggression towards Ukraine, where Donald Trump had said that we will be testing our own nuclear capacities. I want to understand, Mr. Dalton, how do you see this event going on?
Well, there's two dangerous nuclear things going on at the same time. One is that cruise missiles are being used by Russia against Ukraine. And those cruise missiles can be fired from far away from the border. The United States has provided them cruise missiles to other countries. Russia has not wanted Tomahawk missiles to go into Ukraine to be used against Russia. Long distance, 3,000 miles.
Okay.
This is the danger of the cruise missiles that Russia is using against Ukraine. Now, the other issue, whether the Poseidon underwater, they call it an underwater drone, because unlike a submarine, unlike a torpedo, it's guided. It's guided by remote control, and it has much more capability, and it can carry a nuclear warhead. I mean, torpedoes do not have that capability. So this is somewhat of a game changer. In addition, there's a new weapon system that the Russians have developed, which is called a game changer by some of the nuclear arms people, because it is extremely powerful, long range, violates the principles of the START Treaty, which is why Trump reacted as he did.
Yes.
Trump Trump's reaction to say, okay, well, we will begin nuclear testing too. But remember, we're only testing systems. We're not testing warheads. So the systems are being tested to say, okay, does this work? Let's turn on the motor, see the car starts up. Yep, okay, it works. End of the line, you don't drive it out. But as soon as somebody gets the idea that they're going to test warheads, that takes us into an entirely different area. So Russia is not testing warheads, they're testing the systems, delivery systems that can bring those warheads into play. And that's what Trump is saying, that he's going to now begin nuclear testing. What kind of restraints we hold on those, I don't know. Is it going to be underground testing? Is it going to be the very old kind of testing in the middle of the Pacific of nuclear capability? But this needs to be brought back under control for the world's sake, is to restart and to try to make sure that nuclear arms proliferation does not occur. Other nations are watching. China's a nuclear power. But these weapon systems that have been developed, and they're not new, however, I should point out that the systems are being tested, but this Poseidon was available in 2018. So it was a known weapon system, but it's been upgraded, and now they're testing the system, the delivery system, to see whether or not Russia can deliver the goods.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dalton. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Scott A. Leckman, who is joined through Zoom from Salt Lake City, Utah. I have a question for distinguished Mr. Leckman. We know that Mr. Dalton was talking about this Russian military trying to escalate its attack on its flank regarding Ukraine. I want to take your take regarding this, as most of the countries are now, all the world superpowers are now looking towards developing delivery mechanisms for various warheads. And of course, as Russia had testing these missile systems, so did United States of America. I want to understand how you feel about this issue.
Yes, unfortunately, I missed John's comments, but Trump made several comments on Air Force One coming back from South Korea, and he said he would instruct the Department of War to start nuclear testing, and then at the end of his comments, he said that we have to work to denuclearize the world. So he again gave mixed messages here, which he often does. I think that Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing of the nuclear-powered cruise missiles and torpedoes, I think that's going to tip Trump into sending Tomahawks to Ukraine, because he's got to respond to these cruise missiles that Putin has launched into Ukraine. If we start testing nuclear devices, I think that is not wise, and I think it's only going to benefit China, because China is the only one who's going to benefit by future testing if they are seen to have a green light to doing that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Scott Leckman. That was quite so important about how Donald Trump had addressed the press in his Air Force flight while coming back from South Korea. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes, who is our geopolitical correspondent, joining from Washington, D.C. Apologize to everyone that he had to join this late. I have a question regarding the U.S. shutdown, but we in the studio, and of course Mr. Leckman, we were discussing how Russia has ramped up its research into his war mechanisms, and we know that U.S. President Donald Trump is trying to understand how far he can trust China and Russia in this case, even the United States, it has ramped up its delivery mechanisms and understanding how they can predict a future warfare-like situation. I want to take Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes' take on this matter as well.
Greetings. Greetings from Washington. Today, believe it or not, one of the concerns that, well, actually one of the things that we have here in Washington that a lot of people don't have, we have a thing called time change. We lost an hour, Eastern Standard Time. So basically it's 1 hour earlier than it was a couple of hours ago. So I apologize for that coming in. But it's still early here, and Russia has decided to up the nuclear war testing arena by creating turmoil with the testing of this new missile. They are also helping passing this information on to North Korea. The results of this, other countries, including Japan, is looking at starting their own program for defense in the area of nuclear weapons. So this creates a real problem globally because other countries who did not think there was players or should be involved in the issues with weapons, nuclear weapons, are now considering getting into the program to start developing their own self-defense in terms of nuclear weapons, which is very dangerous.
Well, thank you, Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes. I understand that this topic we have been discussing with all of our panelists, but I want to understand where the United States of America and its military, what their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters. One is how the United States have been bombing these vessels, these boats of allegedly those who are in narco trafficking, and of course recently we've seen a Hurricane Melissa bringing down almost all the nations of the Caribbean by a force of calamity. My question to Mr. Charles Dalton, I want your observation on how the Department of War, which is now called, how they are dealing with Southern America.
Well, let me just pass out a few condolences and best wishes to the people of Jamaica. They're very nice people, very calm, excellent athletes, and they deserve everybody's help to try to rebuild. The photos that I've seen of the devastation are extreme. And so we need help for them, help for Haiti, help for Cuba. I mean, now is the time to sort of, as the holiday seasons are coming up, we can think about sharing a little bit with some of those people. You know, I think that, you know, as you say, Trump has always imagined that he could wage a war on drugs. And even when he went to China, his agreement with China was to reduce the flow of fentanyl, or the ingredients that went into fentanyl. So he has always been focused on the southern border as a place where drugs are coming into the United States. So in part, you can see his logic, although as I said, he does not see any constraint on his power. So while this is an act of aggression, he can only justify the War Department using this way if he officially declares a war on drugs, which has not passed Congress. This is what, you know, that's the requirement before you declare an act of war. You have to go to get a special revolution approval. Correct, and he has not done that, and so he's acting kind of as a rogue peace enforcer. I mean, South America is a very complex place. It's advancing. We have some of them now understanding the need to have an alternative to the United States by joining BRICS. So we have, you know, Brazil, Argentina wants to join, Colombia, other countries want to join BRICS as a counterweight to what's happening with the United States, because the United States is looking at them more aggressively. With respect to Argentina, he is just trying to protect his idea about like what's happening in Venezuela, a rich, hugely rich oil country. He's threatened to put boots on the ground. And it's his expansionist idea about controlling resources. Oil, land masses of Greenland, rare earth. I mean, he has this real estate developer's mentality like, well, I got to get the best house on the location. I have to get the best house on the block. And so I think he'll continue to sort of enforce his will aggressively without congressional approval, and hope that he can justify it as this is a way of preventing these illegal drugs from coming into the United States.
Well, thank you, Mr. Charles Dalton. That was quite an overview regarding this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, we have many more things to discuss regarding the Middle East. I want all of you to stay tuned while we take a short commercial break.
Design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant. Crystal clear swimming pool for ultimate relaxation. Modern gym and serene spa for well-being. Perfect venue for corporate events, weddings and parties. Seamless and secured. Elegant and eye-catching design. Indulge, relax, discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka. Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker in international standard billiard zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to International Affairs. We were, of course, discussing the world geopolitical news, but one of those issues that I want to bring to everyone's attention is global climate change and how the COP30 can play a role. We know that the COP30 is this time happening in Brazil. It's happening nearby, something that is very important, the Amazon rainforest, and how this rainforest can be updated. But one of the events over last week that we see in the Caribbean is, of course, Hurricane Melissa, which has torn through the country of Jamaica, and not just that, it has also gone through Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, and as well as Cuba. It has affected 4 nations, and it has displaced many people inside. Black River, Jamaica is one of those places where the hurricane made landfall. And I know that this may be a news from last weekend, but it has global significance. I want to come to Mr. Dalton before I go to Mr. Scott and Mr. Norman Floyd Burns. Mr. Dalton, how do you see this? Jamaica is a peace-loving nation, as I know that they're an island nation at most, and they're situated in the Caribbean. And as I was saying, this hurricane has shown the detrimental force of nature, over 200 kilometers per hour winds. How do you see this happening?
Well, I think we've been warned. We passed the tipping point of the 2% increase in temperature. And this specific event with Melissa in the Caribbean, and as you point out, it has hit Jamaica, then Cuba, then Haiti and Dominican Republic, and then on to Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. And this is all because of the warming of the ocean. The intensity of the storms, the hurricanes, cyclones, call them what you will, become more severe the warmer the water becomes over which they pass. So that global warming just doesn't affect the temperature on the land and factors such as that. It's having an enormous effect on the devastating effect of cyclones and tornadoes and hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean, and even, of course, in the Pacific, where where just recently we had a terrible storm in Japan. So, you know, these meetings, COP 30 and COP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and all that kind of stuff. The fact of the matter is that there is simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels. And we may have already passed that point. That's what the scientists tell us, is that we've gone beyond that 2% point, that the global warming of the oceans is not something we can look at. The ice caps are melting at the poles. So I think there's more fuel burned sending delegates to COP than there is any kind of change in the climate policy that would have a material effect on changing the way things in business gets done. A terrible situation. It cannot get better easily. We're in these repeating El Nino, El Nina, constant every year. It gets to be more and more difficult. But the devastation, I mean, it's now, the financial costs are becoming much more apparent. If life wasn't enough, now we have all of the destruction of the property. So maybe that will get some of these people's attention. If life wasn't good enough, then maybe destroying a hotel resort will do it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dalton. I usually become very emotional when I talk about climate change, as I am a Bangladeshi national. And at the end of the day, one of those nations that are affected by climate change is Bangladesh. So I definitely am understanding the importance of climate change. I want to come to Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes, who is from Washington, D.C. and reporting. He has been going through this latest issue of climate change in the Caribbean. I want to understand how he sees as the damage estimated between this entire issue would be somewhere on the top of 48 to 52 billion US dollars of damage that has wreaked havoc in the Caribbean. I want to understand, Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes, do you think that nations such as the United States of America has an important role in helping those that have been affected in the Southern Americas?
Yes. The quick answer is yes, because the Caribbean is part of the Western Hemisphere. The storm path will lead the Caribbean, and usually there's some effect on the United States, particularly Florida and the East Coast. That's because of the tremendous amount of riptides and shore erosion that occurs on the East Coast as a result of the hurricanes in the Caribbean. The waters of the East Coast, just like the Caribbeans, are getting warmer, and as a result, we can expect more of these type of situations to occur. So what affects the Caribbean also affects the United States to some point. We're not isolated, and the storm is not going to take a turn back into the ocean and not have any effect on the East Coast. So we have, even though we're not directly hit, our coastal communities are always threatened by these increased storms and the winds, the rains, and the ocean rises. So our beachfront resorts are always challenged and questioned. So it's to our advantages to prepare for this, to budget for this, to basically provide assistance, because we are all in the same boat, and we must be prepared for the future. And this is something that could be budgeted out and planned for the future.
Well, of course, thank you, Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes. I understand that Hurricane Melissa and every other cyclone that takes place, not only in the Indo-Pacific, in the Indian Ocean as well as the Caribbean, these are events that are acts of nature. But I want to come to a similar type of event that has happened in the Middle East, which is not an act of nature, but rather an act of genocide that has caused far more damage towards humanity and human life in general. We know that there was a very fragile ceasefire between Israel and the Hamas faction inside Palestine, and there has been numerous situations of hostage transfers between the two sides by the International Red Cross that has been trying to understand and mediating between the two sides. I want to come to Mr. Scott A. Leckman, who is, of course, joining us in Zoom, and he is from Utah. I want to understand the humanitarian costs of whatever that is going on in the Gaza Strip. There is no fresh water. There is a lack of humanitarian aid. There are families that have been displaced over the entire strip. I want to understand how you see the future of Gaza, and do you think that mediating nations such as Qatar and Egypt should play a larger role than whatever they're doing right now?
Well, it's tragic. The needs are huge, and this on and off ceasefire is not helping. It seems that, as predicted, Israel is not particularly interested in the ceasefire, and they're going to try to get away with whatever Trump will let them get away with. I don't understand the actions of Hamas, this stunt with, burying a body and then digging it up. I don't understand what that was about, what the strategy there was. But Israel is not going to let in the needed humanitarian aid. To do that, you need 600 trucks every day to bring in resources, and they're not allowing even half that number. I'm not optimistic in the short term here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Scott Leckman from Utah, Salt Lake City. I want to keep a final question towards Mr. Charles Dalton, who has contributed the most on today's program. But the question remains regarding Middle East. We know that Israel every now and then is breaking ceasefires with Lebanon and southern Lebanon. And not only so, this hostage transfer between Hamas and Israel. This issue is creating more sense of calamity than a sense of peace between the two sides. And of course, Middle East has been garnering all the attention this year. And just yesterday, I've seen that the Hamas had transferred a body which is not linked to anyone who was captured from the Israeli side. So this ceasefire is faltering. I want your final comments before I can end this show.
Okay, I'd be glad to do that. I just want to go back 1 second to the global climate change stuff and remind people that in addition to what happened in the Caribbean, wildfires in California, wildfires in Spain, all kinds of destructive forces happen in addition to those that are caused by hurricanes and so forth.
Of course.
There's lots of dimensions to this whole problem. Well, at least, as I said many, many weeks ago, the Israelis and the Gazans don't trust each other. They hate each other. Every time I would pass through the border crossing between Gaza and Israel, the IDF would ask me, why am I working for those dogs? So you can see that this is not something which is easily resolved. I think it's, as I said also, and I will repeat, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are not under civilian control. They are not even under Netanyahu's control. 3 people make the decisions about what happens with the Israeli Defense Forces: Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and Katz. They are part of the coalition government in Israel. They are controlling what happens with the IDF. They are warmongers. They are also representative of the efforts to take over the West Bank. This is going to be a continuing problem, a balancing act to try to keep these people under control. Will there be a new election that can maybe change the coalition and change the power? I don't even know. Scott mentioned about getting in the humanitarian aid. That would be helpful. As I said, even in the United States, nobody wants to see starving children. And I think as a necessity of life, there should be some recognition that this is an exception to the rule. Excuse me, let all of these foodstuffs come into the country. Israel is unpredictable, unreliable, will not follow the deal that was made. They may manufacture some kind of a crisis. Don't forget, Hamas, when it was put into power, was elected to power. They're a terrorist organization, to be sure, but they're also the elected government. much like the Sandinistas were when they were elected in El Salvador. This is what you should be trying to deal with. And I don't see an easy resolution to this, because every slight deviation from the plan is going to cause an outrageous response from Israel. And Qatar and UAE and Egypt will try to do their best to try to calm these people down, but I don't imagine they're going to want to put boots on the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Charles Dalton, for your stout observation regarding the Middle East. And of course, I thank my guest on Zoom, Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C., and of course, Mr. Scott A. Leckman from Salt Lake City, Utah. I thank you all for your valuable insight and contributions towards this program. Before I draw a closure, I want to let our viewers know that November the 2nd, 2025 is observed annually as the International Day to end impunity for crimes against journalists. As a journalist myself, I must make sure that we all make some kind of attention towards this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying on this program today. I shall see you tomorrow.